Well, if it was rainy today, we'd have more people here, wouldn't we? So it's a two-edged sword. We get a pretty day to go hiking, and everyone else got a pretty day to go to the lake one last time. So, I'm so glad you're here. I want to just jump right in, and I want to show you something that I know you've seen many times before. But I want you to leave today with a revelation that I hope will change the rest of your life. This is found in the story of creation. And don't you think that it would be sensible that the first things that God would tell us in this book we call the Bible would be some of the most important information He would ever need us to know? Would you agree with that? God doesn't do what a lot of pastors do, and I used to be really bad at it if you've been around here for a while. I used to kill 10 or 15 minutes just shooting the bull up here before I could ever get going because I was just like nervous and trying to get my bearings and everything. And now I almost always just jump right into it. And God is not a diddle-dallier. He just jumps right into it in the creation story. And we have to assume that the most important things God would ever want us to understand would have to be found in whatever the first story would be He would tell us. And we see there's two primary characters in the story that we learn from. It's God and it's Adam, it's man. And God is an important role model for us because we're made in His image. And that word Tesla means that we're a reflection of who God is, and it would be understood in Hebrew culture that however God is, that is how we are. Our makeup is like God's makeup, emotionally, mentally, how we think. Yes, His ways are not our ways, and He's so much beyond us, but the beyond starts with where we're at, and we need to understand that. God is exactly like us, but then He goes beyond that. So everything that we are is found within who He is. And this story, to God, seems to be very important. Almost like if you don't get this, not sure there's a point in giving you anything else. God steps out in the beginning and He creates things over 6 days, and then the story ends this: thus the heavens and the earth were completed. Say completed. Finished in all their vast array. By the seventh day, God had finished, say finished the work He had been doing. So on the seventh day, He rested from all His work. I was pondering Labor Day weekend this morning. I've told you before, I'm an early riser, and the older I get, the earlier I seem to rise. I'm my daddy's son, I guess, and I love those early hours. They set the course of the day for me. I remember the days when I was younger, and I would sleep till the very last second and jump up, and I would begin the day with hecticity. If it's not a word, it's going to be by the time I get done with it. I would start out in a rush. Just bonkers and chaotic and dysfunctional. I got to get my teeth brushed, and I got to get in the shower, and I got to do this and get my clothes on. And I would start the day that way. And it would set the table for how the rest of the day would usually go. As I became a little older, I started getting up a little earlier, and sometimes because of biology, just you don't need as much sleep when you get older, and part of it was just trying to exercise some disciplines and making myself get up and start the day from a place of rest instead of getting out of bed laboring from the minute I go to the bathroom to start brushing my teeth. I was up this morning, and Tux is really, your dog becomes a friend, right? Because you spend time with your dog that is a little bit unique. And now that Tux is beginning to grow a little bit out of those puppy things that so annoy me and aggravate me, it's so hard to look at a 100-pound-plus dog and remember that he's just a puppy. And then he does the things that he does. But he he gets up early with me. He doesn't mind. The other people in my house, they mind. And so he graduated to his outdoor lot a few weeks ago, and he finally, we had a huge breakthrough this past week, a huge breakthrough. Hannah went out there to let him out, and he was actually finally in his doghouse. He just did not want to go in there, and he was in there, and he was all curled up. And now that he has went in there and discovered what that is, you can't hardly get him out. Isn't that weird? It's like, I'm not going in, and he put those big giant feet out. It was like if you grew up on a farm, I don't know if you've ever tried this, and I don't remember why we tried this. I just remember we did. Did you ever try to stick a cat in a 5-gallon bucket? Man, their legs are just out, and you can't do it. You can't get a cat in a 5-gallon bucket. I've tried. You can't sneeze with your eyes open, and you can't get a cat in a 5-gallon bucket. Those are two things I know are impossible. And that's the way it was. We would try to push that big old dog in that igloo house, and his big old feet and his legs was going out, and oh my goodness, it was terrible. I don't want to go in there. And he goes in there. I kept throwing his doggy biscuits in there. And he would stretch that big old neck as far as he could go to get those doggy biscuits without stepping a foot in there. Finally, something compelled him to go in, and now he doesn't want to come out. And I went out this morning. It was still dark, and there's not a peep. And I walk across the back deck real quiet, and I usually make like animal noises, trying to get him going. We have to have fun with these dogs. We got to get something out of the deal. And I'll hear the rustling out there, and then I'll hear that big old familiar yawn. It's unique to him. And he'll stretch his neck out, and he'll look out, and he'll see me, and he'll start crawling out, and he stretches, and we go for our walk and around the circle down the road a little bit, and I feed him. And today is just, there was a beautiful mist out. I love fog. I don't know why, but I love fog. I love running in the fog. And it was early, and it's just like, it seemed like a good time to go around and shoot pesticide around the foundation of the house and shoot the spider webs wherever I could find them. And then I saw little weeds, and I went and got more poison. It just seemed to be a good morning to kill things. There's a yellow jacket's nest under some of the steps going up the back of our deck. I thought I had them all, and early this morning, at the break of day, they were coming out, and I went and I got the poison there. I had 3 different poisons that I was using this morning, and I killed so much stuff today. I killed weeds, I killed spiders, I killed bees, I killed all kinds of stuff. And I don't know why killing those things brings life to me, but I was pondering just how relaxing it is to get up and do certain things when there's nothing else pressing on you. I got to hurry and do this because I got to be there. And you think about how much of your life is that the things you're doing out of necessity or even just out of desire sometimes. It's like you can't even really relax and enjoy it because you're trying to hurry up and get to the next place. And I've been on this planet for a while, and I have watched as life has been getting busier and busier and busier and busier. And I'm not sure how much of life that we're enjoying anymore, and I'm wonder how it's supposed to merge with this incredible promise that Jesus gave us. I have come to give you life and life abundant. I'm thinking there's a groove in the road there, and that groove, there's righteousness, peace, and joy, and abundant life. Man, it's just life, real life in there, not just existence, but there's life in that groove. And it's so hard because most of us can relate to being in the ditch on this side of the road where we're just lazy and we're slothful. We don't want to get out of bed. We don't want to do anything. We don't want to keep a job. We just leave me alone. And then sliding across the road into that other side of that other ditch where we're just so stinking busy, we don't have time to even sit and enjoy a meal with our families. Just labor. Life is just labor. And I was pondering this morning just how relaxing it was to kill things when there's nothing pressing on you. Just taking your time and walking through the landscape and shooting some stuff out of a jug at some weed or something, and just that simple thing in life that it was relaxing. And Labor Day was created in the late 1800s. And it wasn't just created so everybody would have a mutual day off, which used to be the case. And nobody worked on Labor Day for many, many years, just like they didn't work on Sundays for many, many years. But Labor Day wasn't just a day to remember, oh, we all have jobs, we work, let's take a day off. It was specifically designed as a day that we were supposed to stop working and reflect back on our achievements that has been produced by the work of our hands. That's what the whole day was about. A day of reflection where we could look back and say, you know what, we've been working hard, but look what we have to show for it. It wasn't about remembering, man, we worked so hard and we're exhausted and we're so tired. That is not how Labor Day started. Labor Day started as a very joyful time to set as a nation and say, look what we have accomplished. And Labor Day, like most other holidays now, has become very perverted. It is not what it was supposed to be. I look at the story of creation, and isn't it interesting that the whole story of creation, while there are many themes, the onion has many layers, and we peel it, and there's 1,001 sermons in there. But isn't it interesting that the primary essence of the whole story, when we look at it at its whole, is about labor and rest, working and rest. And there are two characters there that we're supposed to learn from. We have God, who shows us the process to entering rest. He's laboring, but He's showing us, but here's how you can enter rest out of labor. And then we have this other character, Adam, who starts out laboring. God said, go work the garden. He's laboring, but he's laboring in a place of rest. And the role model there is teaching us how you lose your rest. So God is teaching us how to enter rest. Adam is teaching us how we lose our rest. It's all about labor, and it's all about entering rest. And it appears that God is trying to say, look, no matter how you look at life, no matter what angles you come from, no matter what sermons you try to base your life on, if you don't get this, everything else is just going to be religion. It's not going to be what I planned for you. I'm a parent. I have plans for my daughter. She gets free will, but her free will is going to be directed and challenged and inspired by my sovereignty as her daddy. And I hope to help her find the groove in the road. She's my daughter, and I love her, and God is our Father, and He loves us. And isn't it interesting that God would see this as one of the single most important things in life? God invented work. God set the whole thing in place. For 6 days, God labored, God worked, and God produced. And God showed us there's a way you can enter rest even from your labors. Adam is working the garden as God commanded. And Adam teaches us you can lose your rest where your labor truly just becomes labor. I look at God, first of all, as this great model. And because I'm made in His image and you're made in His image, God teaches us, here's how you do it. And so, while many things are happening in the creation story, God is trying to show us, here's how life works. I want you to take one day at a time, and I want you to labor. I want you to work. And at the end of that day, I want you to be able to say, this was good. This was good. This was a good day. And I challenge myself when I ask the question, how many of our days are we ending saying, this was a good day? Not a good day because an unexpected check showed up in the mailbox, or someone complimented us or patted us on the back. Not because something happened and gave us an endorphin release, but because at the end of the day we looked back and we labored, we worked, but it produced and we said, this is good. This is good. This was a good day. If we can't say this is a good day, then we don't rest. Our labors, they de-energize us, and they stress us, and they burden us, and they weigh us down, and they exhaust us emotionally and mentally and physically and spiritually and maritally and relationally. It drains us and it empties us out. And out of our mouth, our heart speaks the truth. Because I fear for every time we say this was a good day, there are many more times we're saying this day stunk. This was a terrible day. First thing that we learn from the model God and then making us in His image, He said, you've got to learn how to get up and you've got to labor and you've got to work and you've got to produce. If you don't produce, you won't feel good about your life. And Solomon talks about it, and God bears it out all through the Word, that we are made to create. We are in God's image. The first thing we learn about God is God's a creator. So what's the first thing we know about us? We are creators also. And if we're not creating, if we're not producing, then we are empty and we are dead inside. We're not alive because we eat food. We can physically, biologically stay alive just by eating food and sleeping, and that's all. But that's not God, who is spirit, who does not need to eat and does not need to sleep. That is not how He would define life, because He doesn't do those things. So God would define life in a different way, and He would show us the model of it. He produced. And when He produced, He said, this is good. I was out running a couple weeks ago, and I usually keep a lot of my little private encounters in life. Some of them I share as sermon illustrations because that's just what pastors do, because those personal stories are more effective. And there's things that happen sometimes that you want to keep to yourself. And this was one of them I was going to keep to myself. But yesterday I just couldn't get this kid off my mind. So I was out running a couple weeks ago and coming around town. I was coming back down through Stafford Drive and down where that old Cargo gas station used to be here, down here. And there's still the big roof over it where the gas pumps were at, but the building's gone. I ran across through there and I saw somebody laying there underneath the shelter. And I went by, and there was this young man, and he was very bearded, and his hair was very disheveled, and he was wrapped up in an old army coat, and there was a backpack laying there, and there was a couple plastic bags laying there with him, and he was laying there sleeping, and he had his head on a Little Caesars pizza box. I ran by him. Wasn't anything to do. It was me and my phone and my earbuds, and that's all I had. And I ran by him. I looked right down at him, and he was sleeping. And of course, I kept going because I was on the clock, and I was out of breath, and I was almost done. And I didn't get 50 feet back by him, and all of a sudden I started thinking about that story of the Good Samaritan, You know, everybody just passed the guy and just kept on going. And I kept thinking about the priest. The priest saw the guy who had been beat up, was laying beside the road, and he crossed on the other side and kept on going. And it's like, man, the whole way to the church, there was only it's like not much more than a quarter mile from there back to the church. And it's like, I felt so bad. But I didn't know what I could do at the same time. Well, I knew by the time I got back to the church what I was going to do. I'm going back, and I'm going to have an encounter with this guy. I will be the Good Samaritan. I won't be the Good Samaritan. I'll be a good priest today. And it really was bothering me, because he looked like he was about early 30s, and it really bothered me. So I came back and I grabbed a couple cold waters out of the refrigerator, and I grabbed a handful of the kids' munchies back there. And I got in the car and I drove down there, and he was still laying there, and I pulled up, and when I pulled up and got out of the car, he opened his eyes and he just kind of sat up, and I walked over and said, "Hey, buddy," I said, I just ran by you a little while ago, and it was one of those hot mornings. It was one of those hot mornings where starting out, it was like 78, 79 degrees. It was so humid. I was dripping from sweat. It was nasty. And I said, "I just thought maybe you could use some cold water." He said, "Sure, I'll take one." And I gave him one. I said, "Take this one too." I said, "You may need that." And he said, "Oh, okay." And I said, "I've got some cookies and some munchies here. Would you like some?" He said, "Sure, I'll take some." And I gave them to him, and I said, "What's your name?" And the guy just he looked at me, and it's just like, I know it was probably only 3 or 4 seconds, but it felt like time stood still. And in my spirit, I could instantly discern, when is the last time somebody asked him, "What's your name?" You could just tell the guy was almost shocked that somebody asked him what his name was. He said, "Tyler." I said, "Tyler, I just wanted you to know, man, I ran by you and I was concerned. I didn't know what your story was." I said, "Are you just passing through? Or are you trying to find a place to stay?" He said, "No, I'm just passing through, was staying here for the night." He said, I want to keep on going. I said, "Okay, because if you want to stick around, I'll get you a bed. I'll get you some place to stay. I'll get you a meal." He said, "No, thank you very much." He said, "This is all I need, and I'm getting ready to get up and keep on moving." And I kept calling him by name, Tyler, because I wanted him to know someone knew his name. So, Tyler, if you change your mind, I want you to know that at the end of this street, there's a big green church with a purple stripe, and I'll be in that building, and you come down and you find me. Here's the point. There's many sermons that I could bring out of this encounter. But here's the one that I want you to hear right now. I don't know the last time this kid had done anything productive with his life. I don't know his story. I'm sure there's a story there. I'm sure it's more than just bad decisions. I'm sure there were things that led to those bad decisions, lest any of us ever try to judge those things. What I know is that kid was exhausted. Now, I'm sure he didn't get very good sleep laying on that ground using a Little Caesars box for a pillow, and I'm sure that does factor in. But I want you to know it was more than that. This guy, you could tell, was exhausted. And it sure wasn't the time or the place, because it would have produced nothing for me to have this conversation with him. But the reality is, when we are just meandering through life and we are not producing something with our hands, with our creativeness, with the gifts that God has given, when we're not producing, we are exhausted. Some of the most tired people I know are not people with regular jobs. Some of the most exhausted people I know, when I say, "Well, what are you doing that you're so tired?" When they begin to tell me, "Well, I'm just doing this," and I'm listening, I'm going, "Man, you just described the first 15 minutes of my day." They're not producing. They're not putting their hands on things. They're not able to finish the day and have that Labor Day sensation. Look what I have achieved today. Look what I have accomplished. And so their day is very labor intensive, even when they're not laboring. God shows us that pattern, that He gets up on any given day and He begins to build, He begins to construct, He begins to work, He begins to produce. And at the end of the day, He says, "This was good." The second thing that we learn from the pattern of God, whose image we are made in, is that God had priorities. If you've lived on this earth very long at all, you've learned that busyness does not equate to productivity. We are more than busy. We are busier than we've ever been in our life. We're running here, we're running there. We're eating most of our meals in restaurants or grabbing fast food, eating half of them in the car while we're going somewhere. We are busy, 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 but we're not producing, and we're not producing because our days hold no priority anymore. There's no priority in our time. We're terrible time managers. We know what has to happen. I've got to get this kid there and this kid there. I've got to clean this. I've got to do this. I've got to go buy that. And it's just busy, 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 busy. But there's no priority. Some of y'all remember several winters ago, it was one of those really bad Sundays. It was so bad we just had church in the family growth center because we didn't see the need in heating all this up. And there was like 50 or 60 people that could get out was all. So we set up chairs and we had church out there. And we've done that a few times through the years in the winters. And I always just try to do like a simple object lesson or something on those Sundays. And then we get out of here and we go to Cracker Barrel and have bacon and eggs. And we feel sorry for the people that didn't get out that morning because they missed it all. I took a pitcher, a water pitcher, and I filled it with golf balls and filled it completely up. And we asked the question, is this pitcher now full? And everybody said, yeah, you couldn't get another golf ball in there if you had to. I said, okay. So then I took a bucket with some sand in it, and I began to pour the sand in there, and the sand began to filter down around all the golf balls. to where you couldn't see holes anymore between the golf balls. And I said, now is the pitcher full? And some were like, yeah, now it's full. And some were like, I know this is a trick, so I'm going to say, no, it's not full. So I took a pitcher of water then, and I began to pour water in there. And it began to filter down through all the sand until it came to the top. And I said, now is the pitcher full? And everyone just kind of looked at me like, I am not answering this question. I can't imagine what else you can get in there, but I know there's probably something else. Well, there was nothing else. The point to the illustration was the golf balls were the important things in life. You have to get those in there. Those are the things that need to be done. They're very important. They're the priorities of life. And then the sand was the other things that's like, okay, well, this kind of needs to be done. We're going to work this in between the priorities as we can. And it kind of filled in between the bigger chunks of life. And then we poured the water in and we say, this is just the fun stuff that you can pour in. If there's time for it, we'll pour a little bit of this in. It'll be refreshing in life. The point was that you can't really fill a pitcher up unless you really start with the priorities in life and you begin to build that thing out. And we wonder why we're just feeling so empty. So empty. God taught us day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. I'm not just going to labor and finish my days saying it's good. It's going to be good because I'm going to have a priority to my life. Day 1, the priority is we're going to address this light issue. Day 2, we're going to address something else. The priority is we're going to begin to separate this. So we're going to separate the earth and the sky. And day 3, we're going to separate some water and some dry land. And every day had its priorities. And because it had its priorities and priorities were met, then it led to a day where we could say, it's the seventh day. I'm going to rest. There is no priority today except I'm going to go out and recreate. I'm going to ride bikes. I'm going to a water park. I'm going to go have fun. And you could rest and have fun and relax. And I love the word recreation. It comes from the root word recreate. It recreates and re-energizes stuff inside of us mentally and emotionally and even physically and spiritually and relationally and maritally. But our lives now is mostly consumed with the busyness of the sand and the water, not the golf balls. We're not taking those things and making them priority, which leads to the third and final primary thing that I think God was teaching us about, learning how to rest from our labors. He didn't just produce each day. He didn't just have priority in how He managed His time, but God finished some things. And it's because that He finished the things that was important that day that He could say it was good. And when that week, as it were, ended, He would go, now I can rest. Now, you tell me, is it true rest if you take a day off, but you have a laundry list of unfinished things hanging over your head? Do you really ever relax and rest? No. I love the feeling. Now, Monday is my day off, but sometimes I have to juggle things around because sometimes this demands me on Mondays, and I try to find some hours to do other things that I need to do through the week. But Monday, Sunday, the guys here are so awesome. You know, you ask for a dozen guys, you get 24 guys, and they show up and they make many hands makes the work so light. It was just fun. Those few minutes together was just so fun, out laboring and working together last Sunday afternoon. And they piled up my trailer with stuff that I needed to take to the dump. So I took that and then came back and got the second load Monday. Had a laundry list of things I wanted to get done here and in my personal life. And it's just one of those days that when the day ends, you sit down in the chair to watch TV at 8 or 9 o'clock that night, and you really can enjoy whatever's on because you're so at rest. Because you finished. You finished. The Bible says that on day 7, God had finished His work. It was completed, and He rested. I'm telling you, till you complete things, till you finish some things, till you knock out some things off the bucket list and the laundry list, you cannot rest. God made us that way. It's an internal mechanism that God put in us to force us to complete and to achieve and to produce because we're made in His image. He made us to complete things and finish things. And as Jesus hangs upon the cross, He has finally finished everything He came to do. There were multiple things that He came to do. One time He said, I've come to defeat the works of the devil. More often He said, I've come to preach the gospel of this kingdom. And He clearly said, and I've come to die. He did all those things, and on the cross, before He takes His last breath, He says, it's finished. It's finished. Isn't it interesting that as soon as He said, it is finished, just like Father God said at creation, I have finished, now I will rest. Isn't it interesting that when Jesus said, it is finished, He took the sins of the world upon Him, He reestablished connection between God and mankind instantly entered the new covenant, which was prophetically symbolized by the Sabbath rest. Isn't that interesting? That in the story of God in creation, God says it is finished and He enters His Sabbath rest. Jesus says it is finished and we enter the Sabbath rest, which is not a 24-hour period that we call Sunday. It's a covenant we enter into where we're supposed to be priests who labor with linen undergarments, which the linen meant it could breathe. You will not sweat. The whole concept was that if you're a priest, you wear linen undergarments, which means you do your priestly labors, but you don't sweat it. It's not going to be this huge emotional and mental weight. We all need to work. We all need to have jobs. The Bible says if a man doesn't work, he does not eat. But we need to be able to go and function on our jobs and find life in that. And if we're not, we can't just look at it and say, well, if I just had a better job, if I just made more money. The Bible says, even Jesus said, be a good servant to your master, whoever your master is. The job isn't the problem. The boss isn't the problem. The problem is we're exhausted before we ever get there. The problem is we're emptied out and depleted before we even show up and clock in. Because we're just so tired from the busyness of life where we're not finishing anything. We're not finishing any days saying this is good. There's no priority to our busyness at all. And we're never finishing those things. A lot of you guys are like us. You're always doing something to the house, always doing little remodel things, improving your living conditions and trying to protect your investment and maybe even increase your investment. And, I've always been that way. And I'll always have a project. I've got a project I'm going to try to do this week just on the garage door and the front door. It's not a big one. It's a small project. But I promise you, at the end of that day, when I look at it and it is finished, I am going to feel so rested and so good about my life. Every one of you in here knows exactly what I'm talking about. That's the model of God. And then He made us in His image. He said, you're going to have days in your life. Make sure you take those days and you put your hands to those days and you produce and you have priority in it and you finish some things that you're starting. Finish some stuff and you will rest. And then He says, now let me give you another pattern here. I am your pattern. This is how you do it. It's like Jesus in the boat during the storm. You've got Jesus and the disciples. Jesus is at rest in the boat during the storm. The disciples are freaking out. The disciples, they are not our role model. They are not our pattern. They are showing us, here's what you will be if you don't become like Him, the pattern. Ezekiel said, show the house to the house. He's talking about looking at that model and then having yourself carved into it. The model was Jesus. Jesus was resting in the storm. The disciples were freaking out. God in the beginning is saying, okay, I'm your role model. Here's how you do it if you want to enter rest from your labors. And here's how you don't do it. Jesus showed us the disciples. God shows us Adam. Here's how you don't do it. God comes to Adam and He creates a beautiful garden. He says, now go work the garden. Adam was working the garden. He was producing with his hands in the soil. He's working, he's laboring, he's producing. But it's so good. He's walking with God in the cool of the day, which if we have to delve into the writer's mind and into the mind of culture to understand what that represented. All it really meant was it was a place of rest. It was refreshing, walking together in the cool of the day. It spoke of fellowship and refreshment in the presence of God. Adam makes some poor decisions, and God kicks him out of the garden. Here's the story of what happened to Adam. To Adam, he said, because you listened to your wife, and yes, I could stop and preach just from that, but because I want to live, I'm going to keep reading. That's going to probably be my last sermon that I ever preach right there. To Adam, he said, because you listened to your wife and ate from the tree about which I commanded you, you must not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. He'd already been working the ground. Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil, you will eat of it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plants of the field. But by the sweat of your brow you will eat your food until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken, for dust you are, and to dust you return. It's labor, labor, labor. And he's painting this picture saying, and now your life is going to be labor filled with weariness and exhaustion, and you're going to feel depleted and emptied out. God's saying, don't be like Adam. Be like me. Take your days. Put your hands to some good stuff. Get some priority in life. Finish some things that you started so you can say, this is good, this is good. And at the end of, you can find these places in life where you can just be at rest, because the Sabbath is supposed to be a lifestyle for us. Not a day, but a lifestyle. God taught us how to enter rest from his labor. Adam shows us that from a place of rest, you can clearly enter a life of labor. Now, the pattern would be this that God would want us to see. What was it that Adam lost that changed everything? It's still ground. It's still working the ground. Okay, so there's a boundary here. There's the garden. This is outside the garden. This is Eden, and this is the garden in Eden. What changed in Adam's life to turn his work into labor? Well, he's no longer walking in the cool of the day with God. So let me tell you what I've learned from that, because I am Adam and you are Adam. I've learned to take the model of God and apply that to my life the best I can. I don't always succeed, and you're not always going to succeed. No condemnation. We do the best we can, but we try to be intentional. And I try to put my hands to things, and I try to produce, and I try to have priority in my life the best I can, and I try to finish things, complete things. And then I try to retain the things in my life that Adam lost before his labor turned into labor. And I see that what Adam lost happens to be a couple of things that are very key to my life, that turns my life into a place of rest. Adam lost fellowship. He lost the presence of God. And so here's what I've learned. My life, for it to be a place of rest with all I'm doing, and some of you guys can relate to that world where you're boom, 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 boom. You stop at night. I tell my wife all the time, it's like when you see me walk into that TV room to sit down, you might as well hear echoing in the spirit realm, it is finished, because I'm done. Don't be asking me to do anything else, because if she will pay close attention, she will notice that I usually don't go in there and sit down and turn the TV on till I feel like I have done the things that I needed to do today. And that means in the summer I'm usually outside till dark, and usually when I turn the TV on, it's been a long day since early that morning, and I've done a lot of stuff. And when I'm done, I'm done. It is finished. And I turn the TV on, and I turn into a zombie, and I usually fall asleep within 20 minutes, and usually the credits are rolling at the end of whatever I started out watching. I have seen so many intros and outros of TV shows and movies and don't know what happened in the middle. But I'm at peace. I'm in a place of rest, and my mind relaxes, my body relaxes, my emotions are relaxed, my spirit man is relaxed, and I instantly enter rest. So I've found that I must counterbalance my life with fellowship with God. And that's everything from private devotional time with Him to fellowshipping with His body, because God's body is part of who God is. And how can I love God that I can't see if I can't love those that I can see? How can I say that I'm fellowshipping with God that I can't see if I'm not fellowshipping with the part of God, His body, that I do see? And I have found it has been an incredible asset in my life to hang out with you, to eat meals with you, to be in your home and you be in my home, and to just go out and have picnics together and to play volleyball together and go hiking together or whatever it is we do. Just fellowshipping with you brings balance to my life, that brings rest into my life. It counterbalances a lot of the busyness. Adam lost that. He lost fellowship with God. And Adam lost being in the presence of God, because if you're not fellowshipping, if I'm not fellowshipping with Isaac, that means I'm never in Isaac's presence. There's something about being in the presence of God. The psalmist said that the mountains melt like wax in the presence of God. We understand it's not talking about Bent Mountain or East River Mountain. It's talking about the mountains of life, the stresses, the anxieties, the labor. The psalmist said they melt like wax when I'm in the presence of God. That's why I implore you, when you're in here and we're singing songs to God, don't let it just be a song service. If you're from the old churches of singing hymns, I understand there wasn't a lot of goosebumps and stuff that happened during a hymn singing service. I understand that if this is your first church experience, or you've never been in a contemporary church where they do praise and worship and the songs that you see on the screen, I know it might be a little bit of a learning curve trying to figure out what's going on here and what are we trying to do. Well, we're just singing to God, but there's something about when you minister to God that we begin to reap what we were just sowing. We're sowing ministry to the Lord, and now we're beginning to reap ministry from the Lord. And if you can forget about yourself and concentrate on Him, as the old song used to say, there's something, yeah, I'll say it, almost magical that can happen. There is supernatural stuff that happens in the presence of God. The question is, how do we get in the presence of God? We can't make it happen. We can't manufacture it. We can try, but it doesn't really produce. So simple things of ministering to the Lord and singing to Him and bragging on Him and loving on Him with our songs, and it just, He pulls up to the table, and now we're supping together, and He's in us and we're in Him, and we begin to hear His voice, and we begin to feel the ministry of the Holy Spirit in our souls and in our minds and our hearts and our emotions and even our physical bodies, and we see amazing things happening in a man and a woman as they stand side by side in their marriage. Things begin to happen in the presence of God. So I learned from God, but I also learned from Adam that if I am not in fellowship with God, hanging out with God, walking with God, I will have no cool of the day in my life. And if I'm not finding a way to get in the presence of God, just God and me, in His presence, I'm going to die inside. Because that was the result of Adam being kicked out of the presence of God. God said, now you will die. Well, he didn't die physically, did he? He kept on living. So clearly God was talking about something deeper than biology. He said, now Adam, you're going to die. Why are you going to die? Because Adam was no longer in the presence of God. The presence of God counterbalances the labors of life, and the mountains melt like wax. So, what are you putting your hands to that's producing? So at the end of the days, you can say, this is good, life is good. This day was good. It wasn't perfect. It had some surprises, but it was still good. Where's your priorities at in life? Where's your priorities with God and your family compared to other insignificant things? Are you finishing the things that's on your heart? Dreams. Things that you've been wanting to do for a long time. They're in there, and a lot of that stuff God put in there, but you keep putting it off. You keep putting it off. I have never seen a time in American history where we've become such a culture of procrastinators. And I see it even in ministry, in kingdom circles. I see it. We are just such procrastinators. We talk about things in our heart that we want to do, and a year later, nothing has been done. And it leads to all kinds of negative stuff in us and negative stuff between us and stuff. And it just, because we're not finishing things. God teaches us, here's how you enter rest. And He gives us Adam saying, here's how you lose your rest. Before we leave today, I just feel like we need to take a moment and see if we can rest a little bit. Maybe just get into God's presence, just to close out the world and just try to just find a moment where we can walk in the cool of the day with God. Stop all the commotion in our heads and all these things that weigh on us. We can't even sit down and enjoy a conversation or a church service because it's just, well, as soon as this is over, I got to go there and I got to have my kids there, and I curse that whole soccer world that weighs on families and draws families to have to hurry up and get out of church and get to something that's so much less than what they just left. We are so guilty in this culture of walking away from things for something that's so much less. Families that take that very special time. I'm not talking about once in a while with vacation and stuff, but almost on a consistent basis that will take Sunday, that time that we come together as a church family. There's no other time. It's 2 hours that are holy and set apart. It can't be reproduced anywhere else in the week. And we will trade that time for something that's so much less. And then we wonder why we're tired. Why is our marriage so tired? Why is there such a weariness in my household? Isn't it interesting how your body can physically be so tired, and if you look at it, you haven't physically done that much, but you're so exhausted? It's because everything starts deep down and it works its way out. So I was singing last night to the Lord, and I started thinking about Adam. Y'all stay focused right here, please. I can't compete with cute little baby sounds. Please stay focused right here. This is a very important time right here. I was thinking about Adam and what Adam lost and what Adam had before he lost it. And I started thinking about a song. It's a secular song, and I've sang it out a couple times here just because I couldn't contain it. And song Maroon 5 recorded, Stereo Hearts. And God had that with Adam, and Adam had that with God. And they were all resting, and they were all in a place of refreshment. And then Adam lost it. Adam lost it. And his life became one intensive labor. Let's just focus on him for a minute. stereo. It beats for you, so listen close. Hear my thoughts in every note. Oh, so make me a radio, turn me up, I worship you. This melody was meant for you. Oh, if I could only find a note to make you understand, I'd sing a song and the music take you by the hand. I'd keep myself inside your head like your favorite tune, and make myself a stereo that only plays for you. My heart's a stereo, it beats for you, so listen close. Hear my thoughts in every note. Oh, so make me your radio, turn me up, I'll worship you. This melody was meant for you. Oh, my heart's a stereo. Oh, my heart's a stereo for you. Father, I'm waiting. I need to hear from you. 'Cause somewhere on this journey, I think I lost hold of the truth. But nothing really satisfies like when you speak my name. So tell me that you'll never leave, and everything will be okay. 'Cause in your presence, all fear is gone. In your presence, in your presence is where I belong. In your presence, Father, I'm returning to things I used to do. Somewhere on this journey, I think I lost hold of the truth. 'Cause nothing really satisfies, yeah, like when you speak my name. So tell me that you'll never leave, and everything will be okay. Say this with me. In your presence, all fear is gone. In your presence, in your presence is where I belong. In your presence on, sing that. In your Come on, let's stand together and lift your hands and say that. In your presence, all fear is gone. In your presence, in your presence is where I belong. In your presence. Come on, I want to hear you sing that again. In your I just need your presence right here. I just need your presence so near. I just need your presence. I just need your presence. I just need your presence right here. 'Cause in your presence, all fear is gone. In your presence, in your presence is where I belong. In your presence. Oh, can we sing it just once more? In your presence, all fear is gone. In your presence, in your presence is where I belong. In your presence. Father, by the power of your Spirit, would you draw us back to the heart of how you made us? Help us, Lord, to find the courage to go beyond our culture and just the learned behaviors of busyness and get back to a simple life, Lord, of just spending time with you, letting your word refresh us, having a quiet time of you and just simple conversation with you, that would refresh us and restore us. Go on some walks with you, some early morning, some late evening walks with you, and let you minister to our minds and our hearts. Help us to find the courage today, Lord, to break out of the prisons, Lord, of apathy and lethargy and even disappointments, and put our hand back to the plow, Lord. We want to finish our days saying this is good. And we want to interrupt our life every once in a while saying it's finished. It's finished. We did what we needed to do. All right, I got to sing this chorus one more time. Do you know it enough to sing it with me? Because this is the song of Adam to me. My heart's a stereo. It beats for you, so listen close. Hear my thoughts in every note. Oh, so Make me your radio. You turn me up, I'll worship you. This melody was meant for you. Oh. And I thank you, Lord, that most of these people only listen to Christian music and they don't even know the words to that song because they're so much more holy than me. Well, we could have went. We're not going there. Come on, let's go eat so we can go hiking. I love you guys. Bless you.